Welcome back, everyone, to episode 2 of this month's podcast. And I'm going to read the first of what will be a few different excerpts from the book by Master He Jinghan, Taiwanese Baguaquan master. He's my teacher in the Yinfu Gongbao Tian lineage of Baguaquan. And around 2003, I was very privileged, honored to be able to help on the translation of his book, Baguaquan Foundation Training. As basically the English editor on the book. It was translated by a Taiwanese lady, Yang Yahui, and of course based on the original book in Chinese language. And it's since been retranslated by David Alexander, who worked closely with Master He Jinghan some years later to make another translation of the book. And hopefully, all being smooth, I'll be able to release a new copy of David Alexander's translation of the book. But today I'd like to read from the original 2003 translation, just a small excerpt from one of the chapters. It's basically the first half of the book is made up of very short chapters, each focusing on a different principle of the system. And the second half of the book is more technical with lots of photos and explanation of the internal and external practices. So I would like to read from what is chapter 11, and it's called The Mystery of Force. And Master He says as follows: Originally, I didn't understand why martial arts education was so vital for cultivating the future leaders in the old times. Practicing martial arts can strengthen your body, train your mind, enhance your wisdom, protect country and family. These are the necessary criteria for the old-time leaders. Why did the elite of society possess such holistic ability as a result of their martial arts education? What did they understand or realize? What did they possess? Afterwards, I discovered that one of the most vital purposes of studying martial arts is Li, force. Everything in the universe is full of the expression of Li. Actually, everything is constantly moving, and movement generates force. So the only element which permeates all the things in the universe is Li. If you can control the law of Li, then you can control the movement of everything. Martial arts education, in terms of the study of Li, which is concealed in every stage of training, concealed in every movement, adopts the method of self-understanding through overcoming obstacles. The study objects and tools are you yourself. Every joint's angle and position, tendons, bones, and muscles twisting, contraction or extension, the shifting of the body's center of gravity, the relative relationship between limbs, head, shoulders and back, waist, qua, knees, the focus of the eyesight, the concentration of the mind, the thoughts you project or receive, the concept of attack and defend. Internal energy closes and opens and travels up and down. All of these things influence the orientation of Li in every posture and sequence. If any one of these things change, then it will affect the focus of Li, and any change of Li will naturally change all of these things. A human being's microcosm conceals the underlying principle of the vast and refined macrocosm. The practitioner contemplates the interrelationship and types of Li, starting by adjusting the Li in his own body. He contemplates the formation of Li by the static posture. He contemplates the flow of Li by active martial arts forms. He contemplates the primary and secondary Li through the practice of weapons. He contemplates the inter-response of Li through two-person practice. Step by step, year by year, this contemplation makes the practitioner become immersed in the life of Li. Then he is able to cultivate a sensitivity and response to Li. And in this way, the practitioner instinctively discovers that behind everything is a basic motivating force. By knowing the one, you know the 100. You make the complicated become simple. Well, obviously extremely profound, rich, dense in information. So let's have a look step by step at some of the points which Master He makes. So the first one is about the ancient leaders or rulers of society having this training in martial arts in order to cultivate the qualities, strengthening their body, training their mind, enhancing their wisdom, and protecting the country and family. And as he says, this is the criteria for old-time leaders. Well, we've no need to really compare them to modern leaders, but it's a really good standard to think about, not just for leaders of a country, but for us as leaders of a family. If you are the head of a family, you're the head of a martial arts school, or you are at least the head of your own life, the leader of your own life, then these are, of course, necessary qualities in order to have a successful life, have a successful relationship with the world. So strengthen your body, train your mind, enhance your wisdom, and protect country and family. And this brings up another point which I often come back to in my own mind, in my own thoughts, and also hopefully in this podcast, is that the idea of being a protector. If we want to be a really efficient protector to protect people from the dangers of the three battlefields, then first of all, we have to be able to protect ourselves. We have to be able to cultivate our own wisdom, our own strength, if we want to inspire other people to cultivate their own wisdom and strength. We cannot make demands on people that we are not able to meet ourselves. So this is really important, that the old-time leaders, can you imagine if you had a leader who embodied these qualities? You know, bodily strength, a very sharp, clear mind, great wisdom, and the ability to protect. And they weren't the kind of people who would be hiding in bunkers while the war was happening. They would obviously be out there at the front of the battle or leading the battle, you know, on the battlefield, these great leaders. So this is really interesting point to start this chapter with. And as he goes on to say, everything in the universe is full of the expression of Li. And Master He often used to use another term, shi, or force, that he said is inherent in everything. So these two things are, of course, very closely connected. I remember once I was saying, well, it's difficult to really feel and see all of the potential force in the universe. And then we were training outdoors as usual. He pointed to a tree and how the branches, the leaves were moving in the wind. He said, at least you can see the result. If you cannot see the Li or the Shi itself, you can see the result everywhere. It's just whether you have the perception, the necessary perception and eyes to see it. So basically everything is in a state of change, which is the very nature of this Li, is to move, is to create change. And then he talks about martial arts education in terms of the study of Li, which is concealed in every stage of training, concealed in every movement, adopts the method of self-understanding through overcoming obstacles. Okay, so this is a couple of very important points. So instead of just thinking about your training system as a grouping of techniques or applications or theories, you can see that actually every aspect of training involves Li. Either we are becoming aware of the Li, we are developing the Li, we are testing the Li. So the force, this mystery of force, is being revealed step by step, slowly, through every single aspect of the training. And then he goes on to say, adopts the method of self-understanding through overcoming obstacles. So again, this is a very meaningful, profound saying. How do you adopt the method of self-understanding through overcoming obstacles? So exactly like the saying, hard times make strong men. Or if you are born with an easy, with a silver spoon in your mouth, you will always be weak. These kind of expressions are expressing the same idea, is that through overcoming obstacles in training, and as I said before, these could be obstacles of understanding, physical, technical obstacles, then you slowly gain self-understanding, real self-understanding, not just the understanding of your teacher. So your teacher may have brilliant wisdom and ability, but if you don't have it, it's useless. The idea is that the teacher inspires and guides you towards you becoming master of yourself, of your own life. And then another expression here is that talking about, again, the influence, the orientation of Li in every posture and sequence. If any one of these things change, then it will affect the focus of Li, and any change of Li will naturally change all these things. So it becomes very intricate, very fine, very refined. In fact, I was discussing with a close student of mine this morning about how in meditation or in standing Jiangzhuang or in moving, circle walking, or any of these practices where we really put our attention finely inside, is that what seem to be tiny movements on the outside feel to us from looking from the inside and feeling from the inside to be very big. My student was talking about when he was doing breathing exercises, how because of his, had a broken nose many, many years ago, his sinus had been perpetually blocked. But through these breathing exercises, through this meditation, he starts to feel the movement around the bones. And of course, if you're looking from outside, you won't see anything happening. But to him, he can hear cracking and moving and a lot of things going on. So it's exactly like that. Training is really a personal experience that is very difficult to explain to people who are not doing the same training, because there's so many very fine sensations, very fine things, the results that happen. And this is all the change, the effect of the Li. Okay, and then Master He goes on to say, a human being's microcosm conceals the underlying principle of the vast and refined macrocosm. Okay, this is extremely important, huge, and profound statement and topic. So, as above, so below. This is the famous Western alchemical expression, which is saying the same thing. As in the macrocosm, so in the microcosm, and vice versa. So a human being's microcosm, our so-called small self, this little human self of ours, conceals the underlying principle of the vast and refined macrocosm. So quite incredible, as you probably heard the saying, we are a mini universe. Our body is a mini universe. And within us, we have all of the qualities, all of the profound mysteries which you can find in the greater universe. And then when you start to understand this relationship between the macrocosm and the microcosm, or you might say in religious terms, the God and the human being, when you start to really feel the relationship and the sameness, of course, the difference is in the size, is in the subjective nature. And apart from that, the qualities and the powers are exactly the same. So to some extent, you could say we are mini gods. We are gods. We have all the power of the gods. As the famous expression from Jesus in the Bible, what I do, you can do too, but more. So that's a good teacher encouraging his disciples, saying, don't just think I can do this. Don't think it's only in God. You have all the power inside of you. So this is something really interesting we uncover through daily practice, through constant vigilant practice, is these amazing qualities and powers that in the beginning we think they are out there, somebody else has them, or the God has them, or nature has them. Slowly we discover actually we have immense powers. I always come back to this thought that just having existence, just having this mind which has its own kind of li, its own kind of force, the very fact that you can think thoughts, you can visualize things, you can understand, you can love and be loved, you can move through space and time, you can increase your perception of sensory data. All of these things, the ability to experience life, is its own kind of mystery and its own kind of force. And if we ever feel lacking, depressed, lacking, that we're not good enough, that we don't have enough, that we are a victim, a good thought to come back to is, hold on, just this life, however terrible you are going, whatever experience you seem to be going through that's terrible at this moment, but the very fact of having life, no matter it's good or bad, painful or pleasurable, the life is something beyond the temporary experience. It's an eternal, a mysterious, magical force in itself. So this is something worth coming back to if ever you feel lacking. Actually, within our microcosm, we have the powers of the macrocosm. So he goes on to say the practitioner contemplates the interrelationship and types of li, starting by adjusting the li in his own body. He contemplates the formation of li by the static posture. He contemplates the flow of li by active martial arts forms. He contemplates the primary and secondary li through the practice of weapons. He contemplates the inter-response of li through two-person practice. Wonderful paragraph here. So the practitioner contemplates the interrelationship and types of li, starting by adjusting the li in his own body. So all of you who practice, you understand this very clearly, is that through very clear, precise adjustment of your posture, you will feel a specific type of force. So if we're talking about Baguaquan or Xingyiquan, say Xingyiquan holding Santishu, or Baguaquan holding the dragon extends claws, or push palm in the circle walking, you will know after developing the correct structure, there is a very specific type of force or li generated by this shape. And this shape structure, every time you return to it, you will recognize it. Oh, this is Santisha. This is push palm. This is circle walking. I recognize this. Yep, this is home. I'm home. This is familiar. And you can only but increase your perception of it, your understanding of it, the refinement of it, for example, through applying the principles such as six harmonies and so on. You can amplify it, this Li, but the basic shape itself, the shape itself generates or uncovers that Li. And this is an intrinsic part of practice. It's not simply an empty movement that's just following some application or fighting theory. The shape itself has a Li that can then be applied in many, many different situations. As I was saying in this week's previous episode, is that rather than train scenarios or techniques, we want to uncover our core power, which is the Li. And each traditional martial art has a core form for generating its own specific type of Li. This is why as well that you cannot really mix martial arts, because you can't mix two core forms, because what you're aiming for is a specific type of Li through a specific type of shape and movement. As Master He says, he contemplates the formation of the static posture of Li by the static posture. He contemplates the flow of Li by active martial art forms. So that is exactly the point, is the shape has a formation of Li. So it forms the basic underlying force. And then the active martial art forms, the moving form, gives you the flow of Li, the flow of the force, how power changes through time and space using a specific form. He contemplates the primary and secondary Li through the practice of weapons. So the weapons give you the ability to project force or Li further than your hands, for example. And there's many other ways that you can understand Li better through the weapons training. He contemplates the inter-response of Li through two-person practice. So this is very clear. How do you respond to somebody else's Li? And how do you use your Li to efficiently overcome the other person's domain or center? So this is the purpose of two-person practice. You use it as a tool to contemplate, to understand the inter-response of Li between the two or more people. And then Master He concludes by saying, step by step, year by year, the contemplation makes the practitioner become immersed in the life of Li. Then he is able to cultivate a sensitivity and response to Li. And in this way, the practitioner instinctively discovers that behind everything is a basic motivating force. By knowing one, you know the 100. You make the complicated become simple. So once again, this is the search for the center, for the source, for the one principle, the one part of you, the one doorway in you that will uncover everything, all the profound mysteries. Rather than going towards hundreds, thousands of techniques, we go towards that one, uncovering that one principle, that core, that Li. That is exactly what the traditional martial arts are aiming for. That's why many traditional martial arts, the core basic training form is very simple, looks very simple. Simple doesn't mean easy. It just means that it's made up of a few elements. And then this enables you to cultivate a sensitivity and response to Li. So this is somewhat along the lines of what I was talking about in episode 1 this week, was that rather than train for technique in the beginning, you train to be able to understand be sensitive to and respond to Li, to force, both in yourself and because you've trained your understanding of Li in for yourself, in your own body and mind, then it's very easy to see in other people this Li in their body and mind. For example, a concrete example is you start to become very receptive, very sensitive to the direction of people's intention, motivation, and certainly the potential of their posture. You start to see in certain postures what is possible because of the formation of Li, and what is not so possible, what would take change in order to produce a certain kind of attack. So just a practical example, when somebody is moving towards you attacking, you will understand very clearly where their weight is, where their force is traveling from and to, and where it cannot travel to in that moment without changing. So you know when somebody is capable of kicking with the front leg or the back leg. You know when someone has power, a potential power in their front hand or back hand. These are just very simple examples. And you can see so much more because you've become very sensitive to Li in general, force. You understand your own force much better, then of course you can understand an attacker's force much better. So these are just a few thoughts based on this really important book, Baguaquan Foundation Training. It was initially published by Lion Books. I think it was 2003 in English, and the original in Chinese. I have a copy of that as well. And then it was republished by Singing Dragon Books, by translation by David Alexander, whose son Paul Alexander is a disciple, close disciple of Master He Jing'an, who spent quite a lot of time with Master He in Europe and Taiwan, and now living in America. So if any of you are in, I think he's around Boston area, extremely thoughtful, hardworking Baguaquan practitioner, Paul Alexander. His father translated the second English translation of this book, which was brought out by Singing Dragon. But we have recently been given the rights, a line of intent, have been given the rights to the English translation by David Alexander. It's very kindly by both David and Paul and Master He have given us the rights to this book. So at some point, and my estimation it will be at some point next spring, because it's a very big book with a lot of photos and diagrams, so it's going to take a lot of work, but hopefully we can bring it out again in spring, thereabouts next year. Hopefully this was interesting, and if you found this useful, let me know. I can always do a few more readings now and again from Baguaquan Foundation Training. There's other books as well, which as long as there's no copyright issue, then I'm happy to make some short quotes from books if I find them useful to give a commentary on. And of course my commentary is probably unnecessary addition to Master He's book, but the thing with his book, each chapter requires multiple readings. It's not really something you just skim over because it's very profound, very rich. Okay, everyone, I wish you a very happy week. Keep safe, keep well, keep eating nutritious food and training every day. And I will be back next week. Hope to see you all then. And wish you all a lovely week. Take care. See you soon.